Welcome. The film you just viewed, produced by Ireland's Office of Public Works, captures the illumination of the Neolithic chamber at Newgrange, County Meath, just north of Dublin. Newgrange, located in the Boyne Valley, named after the goddess Boan, is one of a number of Neolithic tombs in Ireland, dating back 5,000 years, older than the pyramids. Its Irish name, Gheimhridh, magical mound, points to its pagan spiritual origins. In the 1960s, archaeologists from UCC discovered an unusual phenomenon at Newgrange. Starting at dawn on the shortest day of the year, December 21st, the winter sun illuminates the long stone passage to a womb-like chamber, a marvel of architecture and design that demonstrates the sophistication of these earlier inhabitants of Ireland. The stone circle at Grange, County Limerick, is the oldest stone circle in Ireland, and the reason why Newgrange is considered new. Located just outside Limerick City, near the beautiful Lough Gur, County Limerick, it is the stone circle that we visit on the solstice when we are in Ireland. It is surrounded by huge oak trees. And in the Celtic tradition, the oak is considered the most enchanting and bewitching tree, though in fact the stone circles predate the Celtic period. The Celtic tradition is rich with tales about the solstice. Theologian and singer Dr. Noreen Rian tells us that as a child growing up by the ancient stone circle at Grange, County Limerick, she learned one of the great Celtic tales, which begins with an incantation in Irish. Tá cluasa capel ag an rí, tá cluasa capel ag an rí. The king has horse's ears. For those of you sitting with us at the UU right now, let's have a go at that. Tá cluasa capel Egan, rí. Tá cluasa capel egan rí. Okay, so here's the story Noreen tells about the solstice. Fado, a long, long time ago, there lived a mighty king called Lauros Olinchig. Greatly loved by all his people, he was plagued by the fact that he was born with horse's ears. Nobody was to know of this. To be king, he must be physically whole with no imperfections. So he let his beautiful locks hush the secret. Once a year he had his hair cut by a young barber who would then vanish, never to be seen again, because of the king's secret. This year, however, the young man doing the hair cutting overheard the king's plan to have him disappear and went to the king pleading, "O royal king, let me be free. I am the only child of a widow, and I promise you, on my very word, that I will not tell a living soul about what I have seen." The king granted the youth his freedom, but the undisclosed information was too heavy a load for the young lad to carry. He sought the advice of a respected druid about how he could ease himself of the burden of a terrible secret. The druid advised them to go deep into the forest and whisper his secret to a large oak tree. Convinced that his secret was secure, since this mighty tree was no living soul, he returned home. In the meantime, King Lauros commissioned a brand new harp which would be heard at all of his great assemblies, starting that year at the celebration of the Winter Solstice, Grianstad and Gheimhridh. 3 of the finest woodcutters were ordered to select and cut down the noblest of forest oak trees. 3 of the most reputable harp makers were then to go to work, and in 3 weeks the most superb harp was presented to the king at his Winter Solstice banquet. You see, 3 is a magical number in the Celtic tradition. After a magnificent dinner, the court harper sat before the harp, ready to play, but the oak musical instrument would only chant, Tá clúsa capel ag an rí, tá clúsa capel ag an rí. The king has horse's ears, the king has horse's ears. That's the story. From the stone circle at Grange, County Limerick, let me now take you to the stone circle on the UMass campus, which has a similar purpose to Newgrange. Its 16 standing stones line up with the rising and setting sun at the solstices and the equinox. Erected in 2000, it was the brainchild of the late Professor Judith Young to be used as a teaching tool to improve our understanding of the universe and as a cultural learning experience, a symbol of the connection between our modern society and our past. Grianstad is the word for solstice in the Irish language, and it literally means when the sun stops or stands still. Many religious traditions and observances have their roots in pre-Christian beliefs, and Christmas is no exception, which is why we have several Christmas-related readings in our solstice event program today. Whatever your tradition or belief, let me offer you Banach Dí na Féile, the blessings of the season on you and on your loved ones.
For the second part of this presentation, this is Annie here, I'm going to offer some readings about winter and a little poetry to close. And what you're seeing in this slide is indeed President Michael D. Higgins as a tea cozy. He's beloved in Ireland, he's a erudite, he's a poet, he's a politician, he really represents all of the people of Ireland. And he's an extraordinary man, and people of Ireland really love him, hence the tea cozy. And also, there's something about the coziness of winter. So I'm going to read a little bit now from a book called Wintering by Catherine May. Our knowledge of winter is a fragment of childhood, almost innate. We learn about it in the surprising cluster of novels and fairy tales that are all set in snow. All the careful preparations that animals make to endure the cold, foodless months, hibernation, migration, deciduous trees dropping their leaves. It's no accident. The changes that take place in the winter are a kind of alchemy, an enchantment, performed by ordinary creatures to survive. Dormice, laying on fat to hibernate. Swallows, navigating to South Africa. Trees blazing out the final weeks of autumn. It's all very well to survive the abundant months of the spring and summer. But in winter, we witness the full glory of nature flourishing in lean times. Plants and animals don't fight the winter, they adapt. Winter is when the transformation really occurs. Winter is not the death of the life cycle, but is crucial. And a second little piece about wintering. This is what snow looks like in Lismore, Ireland, where we are as you're meeting today. A snow day is a wild day, a spontaneous holiday when all the tables are turned. It's wild and cozy at the same time, rebellious and heartwarming. It's a liminal space, a crossing point between the mundane and the magical. Winter, it seems, is full of these, fleeting invitations to step out of the ordinary. Snow may be beautiful, but it is also a very adept con artist. It offers us a whole new world, but just as we buy into it, it is whisked away. And indeed, this is more like what Ireland looks like, a little frost on the back roof from the back window, fall, which then introduces some of our Christmas traditions. We collect a branch, a local branch, and bring it inside, put it in our buckets, stuffed with wood and newspaper, and we hang on it some handmade ornaments, one glass ornament, and real candles. This is a Suban chair that I made with my very own hands. obviously awaiting the opening of presents. This is our beloved wood stove, which is the heart of the house, and the one who keeps it going. And for the second reading that I want to bring to you, it's from Imaginary Goddess with Rio Beeson by Paula Meehan. She was the Ireland chair of poetry, and an extraordinary poet, Paula Meehan. I'm going to read a little section in which she writes about the writing of the poet William Butler Yeats. And this is in the centenary of the Civil War year, from 1922 to 2022, that I'm bringing this writing to you. This is Paula Meehan speaking. Yeats, the dreamer, is the one I love most. He ends his autobiographies, note the plural, for the meditation on the Nobel Prize for Literature, which he was awarded in 1923, and he appends this note. I was in my Galway house during the first months of the Civil War, the railway bridges blown up and the roads blocked with stones and trees. For the first week, there were no newspapers, no reliable news. We did not know who had won or who had lost, and even after the newspapers came, one never knew what was happening on the other side of the hill or the other side of the line of trees. Men must have lived so through many tumultuous centuries. One felt an overmastering desire not to grow unhappy or embittered, not to lose all sense of the beauty of nature. A stair, our west of Ireland name for a starling, had built a hole beside my window, and I made these verses out of the feeling of the moment. And this is a famous Yeats poem. The bees build in the crevices of loosening masonry, and there the mother birds bring grubs and flies. My wall is loosening, honeybees, come build in the empty house of the stair. We are closed in, and the key is turned on our uncertainty. Somewhere a man is killed, or a house is burned. Yet no clear fact to be discerned. Come build in the empty house of the stair. He goes on. So this is again Yeats in his note. Presently a strange thing happened. I began to smell honey in places where honey could not be, at the end of the stone passage, or at some somewhat windy turn by the road. And it always came with certain thoughts. Back to Paula Meehan. Sweet Yeats, his instinct, his intuition, his sixth sense, his watchful, elegant mind. And I'm going to take us out with another poet, famous Seamus. If we winter this one out, we can summer anywhere. Especially I have in mind the people who are at war right now, especially the people of Ukraine, who are likely frightened and cold, perhaps some of them hungry, and all of them hunkering in together for the long haul. I wish you peace and happiness and warmth this holiday season, and look forward to seeing all of you when we return in the winter in Amherst.
So, I just want to say thank you to Nina and Annie for having taken the time to do that for us today. It was very nice to hear from them anyway. We have a song from Amanda.
All right, so winter's a time when we sort of, yeah, as Annie said, we kind of hunker down, hunker in, and become a little introspective, but also it's a time for people to kind of gather in houses and, I don't know, make our merry in different ways that hopefully we can do in houses moving forward. One of those great ways of merry making is singing and making music together. So this is a fun song called Samboera, and it's to learn a little more about it, but I believe it's a kind of women's working song, so there's a very particular rhythm that gets going in it. And I'm actually going to teach you a line of the song that you can sing with me and to me, and then I'm going to call back. So it's a bit of a call and response, and it's the intention is singing to a woman and a group of women, singing about possible suitors for the main singer, and one after the other, she gives reasons why they wouldn't be suitable for her, until the last one catches her eye, and she says, I could go with that one. So the line that I'd like you to sing, it's all in Irish. The line that I'd like you to sing is nonsense. It means nothing, but it keeps the rhythm going. It's kind of fun. So this is what it sounds like. Samboeda, bella boeda. That's it. Samboeda, bella boeda. Again. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. One more time, a little faster. Samboeda, bella boeda. All right, you're going to sing that line at the beginning of each section, and then I'll do my piece, and we'll do it again when I point to you. Ready? Samboeda, bella boeda. Oshires kunirages vagumsen kela. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Martino lopando rochen de kela. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Manin patinga na para moveres. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Oshires kunirages vagumsen kela. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Park vat burgado ochen de hela. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Mine jogi skaffe skaffe na heden. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Oshires kunirages vagumsen kela. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Tommashin katse ve samse mar hela. Samboeda, bella boeda. Samboeda, bella boeda. Boren na namsena vashteren. Samboeda, bella boeda. Nicely done.
The next part is a kind of a prose piece. I'm sure you're very familiar with it, many of you. The Gift of the Magi by Gheimhridh. Not a long piece, but in any case, very suited to the time period here. So I'm going to do my best for you. And I've got some quotes to go with. So published December 1905 by Gheimhridh. $1.87. That was all. And 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved one at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheeks burned with a silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. 3 times Della counted it. $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but flop down on the shabby little couch and howl. So Della did it, which instigates the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs and sniffles and smiles, with sniffles predominating. While the mistress of the house is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second, take a look at the how. A furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly beggar description, but it certainly had that word on the lookout for the mendicancy squad. In the vestibule below was a letterbox in which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name of Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been flung to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, the letters of Dillingham looked blurred, as though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming D. But whenever James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim, and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with a powder bag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking on a gray fence in a gray backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She'd been saving every penny she could for months with this result. $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she had calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim. Her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him. Something fine, something rare, something sterling. Something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you have seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin and very agile person may, upon observing the reflection in a rapid sequence of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. Rapidly she pulled out her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now there were 2 possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. The one was Jim's gold watch that has been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the air shaft, Della would have let her hair hang out the window just to dry and depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. Had King Solomon been the janitor with all his possessions piled in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed just to see him pluck at his beard from envy. So now Della's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached down below her knee and made it almost a garment for herself. And then she did it up again, nervously, quickly. Once she faltered for a minute and stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. On went her old brown jacket. On went her old brown hat. With a whirl of skirts and with a brilliant sparkle in her still eyes, she fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street. Where she stopped, the sign read, Madame Sofronie, hair goods of all kinds. One flight up, Della ran, collected herself, panting. Madame, large, too white, chilly, hardly looked the Sofronie. Will you buy my hair, asked Della. I buy hair, said Madame. Take your hat off and we'll have a sight at the looks. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame. lifting the mast with a practiced hand. "Give it to me quick," said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Forget the hashed metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum fob chain, simple and chaste in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone and not by the meretricious ornamentation, as all good things should. It was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him. The quietness, the value, descriptions both applied. With that chain on his watch, Jim might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sly, on account of the old leather strap that he used in place of the chain. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to prudence and wisdom. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and went to work, repairing the ravages made by generosity, added to love, which is always a tremendous task, dear friends, a manly task. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with teeny, close-line curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully, and critically. "If Jim doesn't kill me," she said to herself, "before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.78? At 7 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove, hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat in the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his step on the stairway down in the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit for saying little prayers about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think I'm still pretty." The door opened and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22. And to be burdened with a family, he needed a new overcoat. And he was without gloves. Jim stopped inside the door, as immovable as a setter at the sink of a quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went for him. "Jim, darling," she cried, "don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold it because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a gift. It'll grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice, nice gift you've got for you. I've got for you." "You've cut off your hair?" asked Jim, laboriously, as if he had not arrived at the patent fact yet, even after the hardest mental labor. "Cut it off and sold it," said Della. "Don't you like me as well anyhow? I'm me without the hair, ain't I?" Jim looked around the room curiously. "You say your hair is gone?" he said with an almost air of idiocy. "You needn't look for it," said Della. "It's sold, I tell you. It's sold and gone. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you." "Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered," she went on with sudden sweet seriousness. "But nobody could ever count on my love for you. Shall I put on the chops, Jim?" Out of his trance, Jim seemed to quickly wake. He enfolded his Della. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week, or a million a year, what's the difference? A mathematician or a wit could give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was not among them. This dark assertion will be illuminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it on the table. Don't make any mistake, Del, about me, and don't think there's anything in the way of a haircut or shave or shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you'll unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going a while at first. White fingers and nimble tore at the string of paper, and then an ecstatic scream of joy. And then, alas, a quick, feminine change to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all the comforting powers of the Lord of the flat. For there lay the combs, the set of combs, side and back, that Della had worshipped long from a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoiseshell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in a beautiful vanished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned for them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers, but the tresses that should have adorned the coveted adornments were gone. She hugged them to her bosom, and at last was able to look up with dim eyes and smile and say, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." And then Della leaped up like a little singed cat and cried, "Oh, oh!" Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She held it out to him eagerly in her open palm. The dull, precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. "Isn't it a dandy, Jim? I hunted all over to find it. You'll have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch and put his hands behind the back of his head and smiled. "Dell," said he, "let's put our Christmas presents away and keep them a while. They're too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now, suppose you put the chops on." The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the babe in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were no doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat, who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that of all those who give gifts, these two were the wisest. Of all who give and receive gifts such as they are the wisest. Everywhere they are the wisest. They are the Magi. That's it.
A couple of years ago, Amanda and I were very, very fortunate to spend New Year's, actually, not Christmas, but New Year's, in northwest Donegal, visiting some friends, and kind of with in that community there, it's a place called Cork the Hork, Irish is very similar to the English. And anyway, Donegal in the winter is not exactly a bastion of light and sunshine, being as far north latitude as it is, but it actually is quite beautiful in the winter. The angle of the sunlight makes things seem really golden, and the normal, like, rocky, craggy hills and mountains have a particular softness, which one does not usually associate with rocks. It's quite beautiful, and the community that we spent these days in, it's all Irish speaking, so it's just brilliant, it's absolutely fantastic. But I'd like to play just a pretty quick set of just 3 tunes for you. Inherently, they have nothing to do with this time of year, but because we were guests and we play a bit of music, we were asked at one of the parties, if we would play a few tunes anyway to contribute, whatever. And so we did, and this is just a set that we played. And so, it's been a couple years since then, but whenever I play the tunes every so often, I'm like, oh, that was such a great night, such a wonderful fun. Ihe Hindley and I'm tagging the lyrics, so Irish would be Gheimhridh, so the head of the strength like bags of bells are making noises. So the first tune is actually a song. In English it's called Song of the Tea. In Irish it's Wearan an Te, and it's from the AIA region of the County Cork, and as a consequence it's often called the AIA jig, which my Americanness is like, oh, the Kool-Aid jig, so that's but it describes the insatiable appetite that Irish people have for tea. And then the second tune is called An Tathair Jack Walsh, which just means Father Jack Walsh, Tathair Jack Walsh, but An Tathair. And the third tune is called Frahers, and it's named after a piper, Edward Fraher. It's a very simple tune, but quite old. It dates from the late 1700s, I think. Don't quote me on that, but check it out. Edward Fraher. I tune because I care about you.
Our next piece originally was just going to be this, a recital kind of thing, but got an idea from Amanda when we were at a benefit of hers a few weeks ago. Sam and Eve and I had the opportunity to go up to Greenfield and listen to her swing band, which is just aces. If you ever have the opportunity to go, you should go to listen, because we know she has the voice of an angel, but wow, she can sing swing. Let me tell you, she sang Blue Skies and Fever, gave me chills. So, in any case, are you going there today?
That's where I'm headed right after this.
Okay, so in any case, if you have the opportunity to get up there to see that, it's well worth it. But, so instead of doing this as I was going to do this, we're going to do this as a group reading.
Yeah.
Because I think you guys pretty well know it, but if you don't, it's right up here. And having gone over it a couple times now, there's a couple places that are a little different than you may remember. And this is supposed to be the original one, so let's see if we can keep up with it. Together. 'Twas the night before Christmas, when all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings were hung by the chimney with care, in the hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. The children were all nestled, all snug in their beds, while visions of sugar plums danced in their heads. And the mom in her kerchief and I in my cap had just settled our brains for a long winter's nap. When out on the lawn there arose a clatter, I sprang from the bed to see what was the matter. Away to the window I flew like a flash, tore open the shutters and threw up the sash. The moon on the breast of the new fallen snow gave the luster of midday to objects below. I'm sorry, Dave. And when much my wondering eyes should appear, but a miniature sleigh and a tiny reindeer, with a little old driver so lively and quick, I knew in a moment it must be St. Nick. More rapid than eagles, his coursers they came, and he whistled and shouted and called him by name. Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen, on Comet, on Cupid, on Donner and Blitzen, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall. Now dash away, dash away, dash away all. As dry leaves before the wild bird may fly, when they meet with an obstacle, mount to the sky. So up to the housetop the coursers they flew, with a sleigh full of toys and St. Nicholas too. And then in a twinkling I heard on the roof the prancing and pawing of each little hoof. As I drew in my head and was turning around, down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys was flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opened his pack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up like a bow, and the beard of his chin was as white as the snow. The stump of a pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a little round belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. He was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. A wink of his eye and a twist of his head soon gave me to know I had nothing to dread. He spoke not a word, but went straight to his work, and filled all the stockings, then turned with a jerk, and laying his finger aside his nose, and giving a nod, up the chimney he rose. He sprung to his sleigh, to his team gave a whistle, and away they all flew like the down of a thistle. But I heard him exclaim, ere he drove out of sight, Happy Christmas to all, and to all a good night.
One Christmas tradition in Ireland is the Christmas cake. Have any of you Yeah, tentative hands going. Have you tried to either make or consume one of these things? The traditional Irish Christmas cake is a very dense fruit cake type of thing, and it has many, many, many things inside of it, and it's just like it'll get your bowels moving if you eat it. And so this song is about that Christmas cake, and it's very silly. It's called Miss Fogarty's Christmas Cake. Yeah, done by the Irish Rovers, I think. As I sat in my window last evening, the letterman brought it to me, a little gilt invitation saying Gil will be come over tea. I knew that the Fogartys sent it, so I went to for all friendship's sake. And the first thing they gave me to tackle was a slice of Miss Fogarty's cake. There were plums and prunes and cherries, there were citrons and raisins and cinnamon too. There's nutmeg, cloves and berries, and a crust that was nailed on with glue. There were caraway seeds in abundance, such a work about 5 cents a cake. Could kill men twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. Miss Mulligan wanted to try it, but it really wasn't no use, for we worked on it over an hour, and we couldn't get none of it loose. So Bert came in with a hatchet, and Kelly came in with a saw. That cake was enough by the powers above for to paralyze any man's jaws. There were plums and prunes and cherries. You can sing along if you want. Plums and prunes and cherries. There were citrons and raisins and cinnamon too. There was nutmeg, cloves and berries, and a crust that was done with glue. There were caraway seeds in abundance, such a dwarf a fine stomach ache that could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. Miss Fogarty, proud as a peacock, kept smiling and chatting away, till she tripped over Flanagan's brogan, and she spilled the poteen in her tea. Gilroy, she says, you're not beaten, have a little bit more for me say. And no, Miss Fogarty says, I've had quite enough of your cake. There were plums and prunes and cherries, there were citrons and raisins and cinnamon too. There was nutmeg, cloves and berries, and a crust that was nailed with glue. There were caraway seeds in abundance, such a work of a fine stomach cake. They could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. Maloney was took with the colic, O'Donnell a pain in the head. MacDonald lay down on the sofa, and he swore that he wished he was dead. Miss Bailey went into hysterics, and there she did wriggle and shake. And everyone swore they were poisoned just from eating Miss Fogarty's cake. There were plums and prunes and cherries, there were citrons and raisins and cinnamon too. There was nutmeg, cloves and berries, and a crust that was made with glue. There were caraway seeds in abundance, such a work of fine stomach ache that could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. It could kill a man twice after eating a slice of Miss Fogarty's Christmas cake. The end of our program today, is that right?
Yes, I've got a few announcements, and then we'll be done. As soon as I find the page. So as we close and look forward to some delicious tea and scones here in a minute, first let's thank our presenters today. We can't, but we're going to anyway. Ida O'Carroll and Andy Rogers. So, and thank you to our singers and musicians, Amanda Bernhardt and Jonathan Kennedy. And in advance, let's also say thanks to the musicians who are also here to play here shortly. Thanks to Terry Morton and Sue Goodhine, who are putting together tea and scones as we speak, and for coming up with some songs. We also need to thank the Consul General, Alicia Moore, and the Irish Consulate of Boston, as well as the Immigrant Support Program of the Government of Ireland, for their unwavering encouragement and support for our programming. Lastly, let's offer our co-chair, Sam Hannigan, and his wife, Tammy, a group wish for a swift and complete recovery from the current illness. Please. Our Our next event will be held here on Sunday, January the 29th at 2 p.m. when Dr. Elizabeth Staff will be telling us all about the resources of the Irish American Heritage Museum in Albany, New York.
And a very big thanks to Tim for manning the fort today.
And thanks to Clara for.
Yes, thank you. We're going to start playing the drain. So as we're about to jump over to Tea and Tunes, I just want to offer a quick Irish blessing for those of us on the road. May you be blessed with the spirit of the season, which is peace, the gladness of the season, which is hope, and the heart of the season, which is love. So best wishes for a safe and beautiful holiday. See you all on January the 29th, 2023.